Cheers. Thank you. So it's a great pleasure to try to open up this, what in recent years has seemed to be a bit of a controversial topic. Of course, the current status in how we produce and consume energy is changing. There are different reasons for that. We probably won't go a lot in depth with those. But we try to discuss a little bit about what does it mean, how we're going to use hydrogen, why we're going to use it, why do we need this, and what are some of the intrinsic drivers that perhaps force us towards hydrogen in the upcoming years. And as I mentioned, it's a bit of a controversial topic, so I would actually, we have a great presentation here from different EU states, and it's rather interesting for me to know how people in your ecosystem see hydrogen. For example, if you would go out on the street and ask the person about what do you know about hydrogen, so how do you feel about it, what is your experience with it, would you get a lot of feedback? Would they be somewhat hesitant? Would you get negative feedback, positive feedback? If you can open up this a little bit. Maybe I would start with you, Raimond.
Okay, thank you, Sven, so much, and I'm really glad that we have a hydrogen topic on agenda now here on Startup Day also. So welcome to Tartu. I'm always welcoming people from the city side also. So hydrogen is a hot topic in Estonia, but so far it has been more discussions than actual activities. So I really hope that the situation will change quite soon. So basically people on the street, as you were speaking about, they really don't know about hydrogen, that's for sure. And most of the decision makers also, who have to actually make the activities happen, they also don't know about hydrogen, and that even brings more challenges on the stage. Because if the people don't understand what are the opportunities arising from hydrogen, then they are not really willing to bring it on the table. So you first have to convince that hydrogen is something that we need in the future. So also here in Tartu, we are trying to be kind of pathfinders, and we are trying to be the ones in Estonia who are really pioneering, who are making things happen. I can really feel that hydrogen will play a really important role in the future here in Tartu, because especially nowadays when we have the energy crisis going on, and we know exactly that the local production of fuels, the local production of energy is becoming more and more important. And hydrogen is offering really good opportunities in this field. So we can say that for the first, of course, it will also support local economy, because hydrogen is, it will create also new jobs here. But also it will help us to really put additional point to the energy mix what we have here. So hydrogen is really good as a storage of energy opportunity. So we have a lot of possibilities here in Estonia to produce renewable energy. We have a lot of opportunities. We can produce much more energy than we need here in Estonia, but how to actually make the storage happening? So that's the first issue, and I can see hydrogen a really good opportunity here. Because if you're collecting sunshine, solar energy, then you can store it in hydrogen and use it later on. And also wind energy, so on, so on. But the next level, what I can see most important here in Tartu is that Tartu is becoming carbon neutral, and we are part of the European Union mission now, 100 carbon neutral cities by 2030. So it's a great opportunity for the city. It's also a great challenge for the city, because Tartu is the only city from Estonia who is part of this program. And we are really trying to increase the level of renewable energy, what we are consuming in the city, and then also to make the local production of energy more active. So those are the main points I can see for hydrogen right now. Here, of course, we have many use cases which might be appearing. We have been mainly speaking about transportation so far, but also, of course, heating is one of the opportunities, etc. So many opportunities.
Thank you, Raimond. Very, very nice overview. So Pia, how is the situation in Finland if you would go on the street and ask someone, so how about hydrogen? So what do you feel about it? So what do you think that the Finns would say? Is there Is there anything they would be concerned of? Would they be happy about it, or is it still a bit unknown?
Well, I think in Finland, hydrogen is right now a hot topic. There are a lot of discussions ongoing in media and among the companies, and of course also in the governmental level. So I think the main target for utilizing hydrogen, especially in Finland, would be to decarbonize the industry, because there are a lot of such kind of industrial sectors where the direct electrification is not possible. So hydrogen is one very important solution for that. But of course, also, for example, the transport sector, heavy road transport, but especially maritime sector is going to be very important. Either utilizing direct the hydrogen as a fuel, or then as an ammonia or synthetic fuels. That would be the future solutions. But as an ordinary consumer, for example, in Finland, and I think in other countries, are not so well involved yet for the hydrogen. But I think we must be as open as possible and tell the plans and also discuss about the risks. But anyway, I think the hydrogen would be the main solution to decarbonize and help us to also reach the climate targets, which are quite strict in many countries. And that will come soon. So we already have to start doing.
Thank you, Pia. So what is the situation in the Netherlands? I think if we compare those three countries currently here on stage, I'd say Netherlands has gone the furthest. So you have hydrogen buses, you're thinking how to implement this for energy purposes, so a lot is going on. I would assume that the feel for people is much different than in regions where it's still used rather in industry or in those applications where people cannot see this in their daily lives. So can you comment on this?
Yes, I think if you ask in the Netherlands people about hydrogen, then mostly their reply would be, or my reply would be to them, is to go and visit heaven. And heaven, with double N, is the first European hydrogen valley in the north of the Netherlands, in Groningen. So we actually have a hydrogen valley in the north where people can see how it all works. It's actually an ecosystem where, you know, industry, transport, but also heating of people's houses are done with hydrogen. So in that sense, people can actually go and see it. But if you allow me to go maybe one step back and also reflect on your question, is I think technologies like hydrogen and these kind of developments and changes, most of the time they come through necessity, because you need to. Throughout the history of my country, our knowledge and our know-how about water comes because 2/3 of my country is under sea level. And wind energy is not something new. We have built windmills in the Netherlands for centuries. But the new thing now, and the biggest challenge is to where do you get these natural resources, CO2 neutral, and how do you bring them to where people live and work? And there, of course, hydrogen plays a very important role, not only as a storage, but also as a carrier. You know, because most of, for example, offshore wind, of course, you know, it is on the sea. So how do you bring that energy towards where people actually live and work? And I want to also add a little bit what Raimond has said about where you produce the energy. It's usually more than what you can actually use. For example, we in the north of the Netherlands, by 2030, we expect to have 10 gigawatts of offshore wind, whereas 5 we can put into the grid, but what do you then do with the other 5 gigawatts? And there you can use hydrogen as storage. And the same goes for Estonia. You have the ambition to have 7 gigawatts of offshore wind, but it's 2 times more, even more than 2 times, of what you actually actually use. So what you do with the rest?
Yeah.
So
That's a very, very important question. So, but I think we all have shown that hydrogen is really necessary part in the energy mix going forward. So there's a clear role for this in the portfolio, and we can use this for many different applications: industry, transport, heating, energy. So, but I'd say in Netherlands it is already happening to some level. In Finland and Estonia, maybe a bit less. So what are the barriers? So, I mean, you have clearly overcome some of the barriers.
Yes.
So could you comment on this a little bit? So how have you set it all up? Has there been like a more clear business case, more clear use case for Netherlands compared to many other nations in Europe? It's not just an issue in Finland and in Estonia. It's in many other nations as well. So how have you managed to get to that point? Is this good integration to different European programs? Is it a local need? Is it a mix of things? Could you open up this a little bit?
I think in a very particular case, in our case, it is all of it. It's a local need, it's a national wish, and it's an international aim by the European Union. So locally, Groningen was, of course, where we first started drilling for natural gas, more than 70 years ago, 60, 70 years ago. But at some point, we stopped drilling for gas because of they created earthquakes and people were unhappy about the cracks in their houses. And then you need to look for alternatives. That was the local situation. Then there's the national situation of climate goals, which we have agreed to meet. And then you are looking at the whole picture and every single part that you can use. And we believe that hydrogen is part of this sustainable solutions to go carbon neutral. That was a national wish and aim and a policy. And then, of course, you have the European level. And then, when you bring all of that together, the idea came to ask the European Commission for a subsidy to create the first hydrogen valley. And that was done. We got 20 million from the Commission, and 70 million was put by the state and the private sector. So it's a project of 90 million euros. But I think it all has to be together, that it has to fit the local situation, it has to fit the national aim, and all of that contributes to what we are trying to do as a European Union. And there are funds for it, there are ways of doing that, and all this experience we are sharing with Estonia to put its own proposal for the first world national hydrogen valley, because ours is a regional one, but you are really trying to make it throughout Estonia, and we are helping Estonia do this because of our experiences in Groningen. And hopefully in September, Estonia will put its proposal to Brussels.
Great, that's really great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
How do you see it in Finland? So what kind of barriers do you currently see? Is it more the acceptance of politicians? Is it more the acceptance of companies? Is it still that, for example, the current business models are not there, or maybe the technology? So what are the barriers?
Well, I think in Finland, the hydrogen economy development is heavily company-driven. So the companies are already moving. But of course, there is a lot need for money to investments, because it needs also changes in the existing infrastructure. So, but I think in Finland it's mostly positive, and it will move on quite fast. So I don't see that kind of restrictions there. But I think collaboration between Nordic Baltic countries is very important thing to kind of really build a hydrogen economy in that area, because there's a huge wind power potential, and hydrogen gives us the possibility to also storage it.
Yeah, thank you. Raimond, what about Estonia? So how do you see Tartu definitely like a flagship in Estonia, looking to do a lot in the hydrogen energetics. We're talking about university providing and developing new technologies. We have very how to say, climate neutrally positioned city government. The cities looking what to do, how to become more green. A lot of things are already done. So how do you see this? What do we need? As there is clear interest from companies, from public sector, how do we start it? What do we need? Is there any barriers we're still not addressing, perhaps?
Yes, thank you, Sven, so much. So I can see that barriers are actually a little bit various, depending on the use case also. But the main barriers I would like to highlight here, it's economic barriers. And I strongly feel that we have the interest in public sector, we have the interest from the private sector, we have interest from academia. So actually we have the potential to have the value chain working really well. But I can also see that because the investments are quite high into hydrogen technology, I can also see that maybe the revenue in the beginning might not be at that level that will bring you profit if you look it from the company point of view. So it takes some time if you arrive to this kind of scale that will really be profitable. So how to overcome this kind of death valley, I would say. So that's one of the greatest barriers. And I really hope that actually, as we have all the partners from different parts of the value chain behind the table, that we can draw at least this kind of set of activities that will be feasible, that we can really make it happen, even if we start a little bit smaller scale, then we can scale it up later on. And everybody, every piece of the chain has to understand that profit in the beginning is not possible. But we have to be looking into the future, and we need to be really perspective in this case. So I see economic barrier the main barrier here.
And here we have a very good example from Netherlands where you would use European funding to help with the companies, with the investment from companies to start something that would be the basis of this economy. So this is I think very relevant how we can use this kind of funding that is supposed to be there to reduce those barriers, to provide companies with the understanding that there is support from EU. EU is interested in this topic. You are not alone. We want to develop this. We are on board with you. We're supporting you. So please come with us and let's do it together. So this kind of approach, I think, is quite necessary if we want to reduce those barriers. But I think both Pia and Raimond, you mentioned collaboration. So it's a very important, not just word, but an activity. So at least here in Estonia, as we are a rather small country, we are quite dependent from our neighbors in many sense. So Pia, could you open up a little bit more about the collaboration part? How do you see what the countries, what the companies in different countries could or should be doing together, and discuss this a little bit?
Well, I think it would be very good to kind of create this kind of hydrogen valley, cross-border hydrogen valley between Finland and Estonia, because we have quite many companies who work in both countries. So there are already collaboration existing. We have the electricity connection and also the gas pipeline between the countries. So it might be easier to utilize those already existing ones. But of course, in the European Hydrogen Backbone report, there was mentioned this Corridor D from north part of Finland and Sweden through Finland to Estonia, and then Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, North Germany, and also Netherlands we were discussing. So this is a huge possibility, but the collaboration between all the Nordic and Baltic countries is very important. And I think it's coming, because there are already very good discussions ongoing, and we have similar targets and also those joint companies, but also differences. which is very good when we are building the hydrogen economy, because not everybody can produce hydrogen if there are no clients who will buy it and utilize it. So that's why it's also important that we have different type of companies.
Yes, Raimond, how would you address the collaboration point?
Yeah.
So on one hand, it can be seen as collaboration between different public, private sector and academic actors, but also on the Estonian level, European level, global level.
Yeah, for me, it's the most important collaboration. It's to create a value chain, to have every piece of the value chain in place. So if it's possible to do it at Estonian level, that would be great. If we need international collaboration, of course, that is also okay. So I think that's the most important collaboration that we have, because otherwise efficiency in the hydrogen economy is not possible if the value chain is not working properly. Then what we need in the beginning, from Estonian point of view, that's definitely the knowledge. We need more knowledge. That's why we have to learn from the Netherlands, for example, who has much more experiences in hydrogen economy. So we need this kind of creating of understanding of hydrogen here in the society, and we have to learn a lot. So that's why we need to somehow involve external partners into the process to create the Estonian hydrogen economy. Then the next step, I can see that we can be the exporters of hydrogen. So then we need international network to actually have our partners who are ready to buy hydrogen from Estonia. So that's why I can see different levels of collaboration. We will start from the very beginning, and then at the end of the day, hopefully Estonia will be a powerful hydrogen economy, and we will supply also our neighboring countries or even further. So let's see how it will work out. But yes, value chain is the most important first.
And especially looking from Estonians' perspective, so a little bit contrary to Western world, we don't really have the industry to decarbonize. So in many countries, the moving from gray hydrogen towards green hydrogen is a bit easier, because you have sectors or value chains which you can decarbonize. In Estonia, we have to set up everything from ground zero. Fortunately, we have good sources to learn from. So there are others who have done this to some extent, and we can use and collaborate with their knowledge already.
Yeah.
So, but coming to Netherlands now, so you are one of the three flagship valleys that are existing in Europe. The other ones in Mallorca and Orkney Islands. So, do you have anything to learn from Europe now or globally, or how do you see this collaboration? Do you see yourself more of learners, more as already providing this knowledge and helping to set up this hydrogen economy? So do you see this as a larger collaboration project, or it's currently still in the stages where mostly countries have to work on their own to develop their own hydrogen economies, and then we would figure out how we can link those?
I think it's almost like a parallel process. Okay, we had the first hydrogen valley in the Netherlands, but we have sought cooperation with Germany and Denmark, and we would like to include Estonia in this as well, to really make an EU hydrogen valley proposal, which could be called Hansa Hydrogen Hubs. And the idea is what Pia was also mentioning, is to really connect, because there is no point in doing hydrogen on your own within the limits of your own country. There's really no point. It's too expensive for now. The technology is very new, so you need every single cooperation that you can get. So also we in the Netherlands, we don't think, oh, we have one in Groningen, we're done. No. The aim of my country is also to be a front runner to create a world hydrogen economy. So to be a front runner in that, and we truly believe that Europe and the regions and the member states that are doing this pioneering work, that Europe can lead in this. And so we are definitely not done. in the Netherlands. We seek a lot of cooperation. We are open to sharing our knowledge and experience, because I think this is of course, we are here at the Startup Day. I just want to say that the most important challenge for hydrogen is to scale up, basically. I mean, I'm sure startups know what that means. Is you can get stuck in your own national reality, but what you need to do is to scale it up regionally and then European, but even globally. Because the challenges that we face, we really, like I said, we need every part of the puzzle to meet these huge challenges that we have. And if you allow me, I just want to go quickly back to what you asked before, and I forgot to say, is that, of course there are still barriers and challenges. Certification is one, financing is another, of course. But also, Raimond was saying this also, awareness of people. People have to see how it works. But then, of course, in Tartu, there are opportunities for them to see it. So to bring this matter closer also to the people. Maybe they don't need to know exactly how hydrogen works, but they need to know how what it can mean for them. No, definitely we're not done yet. The Hydrogen Valley in Groningen is just the beginning, and the more later aim is a global hydrogen economy. Yes.
Understood. I think you pointed out a very, very important factor is that people need to see what it actually means to have hydrogen in your ecosystem. And when we're talking about Estonia, then starting with buses or transport in one way or another, even if it's a ferry or if it's taxis, it makes sense because people currently are perhaps a bit afraid. They don't know what it means. It's a new thing. It's natural to be a little bit afraid of something new, especially if you're not really sure what it means to you at the end. So these kind of public projects where people can actually test and drive actually a bus could be really good for.
But at the same time, I think the responsibility of a government is to see beyond the current horizon. Of course, you cannot expect every individual citizen to, have this very long-term perspective. But I think as a government, as a state, it is our responsibility to have this long-term view, and hydrogen it needs investments now, it needs technology, it needs development, but you have to start somewhere. And this is part of our future. And I think the earlier that you get on board and try to be there from the very beginning, later on you will bear the fruits of the investments and the energy that you put into it now.
Yeah, fully agree. So going forward, we've discussed that it's a sector that will be, if it's not already born, that will be born probably in many European countries, rather sooner than later, or in the mid-long-term perspective. And this means that there will be perhaps a lot of opportunities for different technologies, also for startups and investors to help to put this huge economy up. So there will be many, many opportunities for many different players. So when you look at from your perspective now, what would you recommend? So it's a startup day, so it's a startup event. We have a lot of investors here, we have innovators here, we have companies looking for their next great business idea. Companies want to become unicorns. How do you see the system now? So what could you recommend to startups, to innovators, to investors? Is it the right time now to move in? So you can bring analogies from solar world, for example, where for a while people were saying that the solar will never work because it just will not work. And I'm guessing that the same has been true for wind energy, but already long time back. So are we sort of experiencing the same barrier here with the hydrogen economy, that it's actually people who are more close to it can see that it's going to happen, but people who are a bit further from it are still a bit afraid. So if you have any suggestions for the crowd today who are thinking about to become an entrepreneur in a hydrogen sector, in a hydrogen area. So what should they do? What should they be aware of? And what could be the key points? Raimond, please.
Okay, thank you, Sven, so much. Yes, it's always the issue if you don't have a sector which is still existing here, how much you can actually expect innovation around it. Because normally if you have a flourishing sector, it's mature, we can see a lot of innovations also which are possible to create on the top of that. So regarding hydrogen, we can also say that many things which are innovative here in Estonia have been done probably a long time ago in Netherlands, for example. So we are just starting a project with Viitseme region in Latvia, so to have the first fueling station for hydrogen here in Tartu, to have the first test with hydrogen bus here in Tartu. So that is innovation for us, for example, here, but it's not any more innovation for the Netherlands. So I can see that, of course, first startups have already started with hydrogen. Also here in Estonia, in Tartu, we have a hydrogen drone company here who is really willing to develop the service and the products. We have also fuel cell generator company who is really trying to change the world also. We have also the first self-driving hydrogen bus in the world, which has been actually created here in Estonia, hand in hand with the University of Tartu and company Auete. So we have first innovations already happening here, but I really do believe that to make people more like thinking about hydrogen-related innovations, we need to have something more tangible here. So it's not really easy to start. And of course, we have really many wonderful ideas arising from the university. And there is a great chance to put it into practice. Especially here in Tartu as a university city, I see a great chance for the spin-offs from the university also. So I really encourage also this kind of innovations. But yes, if anybody here is willing to have some business idea related to hydrogen, I can make you actually a good mentoring with people around here. I know the guys who are involved in hydrogen field, and we can really support you and find something great out.
So if there's anyone, just after the panel, please go and check what Raimond will tell you. So Pia, what is the situation in Finland? So do you see more established companies going into hydrogen, or is it more for startups still?
I can say that when I have following the Finnish hydrogen cluster work now almost a year, so there are over 60 companies where half of them are big international companies, industrial companies, but half of the companies are SMEs and startups. And it has been very interesting to follow the discussion between the large global companies and between the startups. So it's really interesting, and I think there are a lot of possibilities for the startups in hydrogen sector right now.
Thank you. And Netherlands, I mean, you're setting it all up, so do you see the whole, let's say, innovation value chain, so from academic research, early stage startups, established companies, do you see the whole mix there now?
Yeah, I think this is for my country in the Netherlands, not just for hydrogen. We absolutely believe, and it's a top sector policy that we have. Basically, it's academia, research and development, government and private sector always working together. Because there's really no point to innovate just for innovation's sake. There's no point in, just doing business but not taking the opportunities that innovation brings. I mean, how can in the modern world you can be an entrepreneur and not look at new innovation and new technologies? That is simply not possible. And then for the government to coordinate and to set the parameters that are needed, like infrastructure and like the bigger investments that are needed for these type of things. So everybody has their own part to play. But I would more say that the private sector investors and the government, like I said, are more there to create the right circumstances, but the actual innovation, the technology to bring this hydrogen one step further lies with the smart people, the startups, you know, who can maybe fix on a particular issue that that needs to be solved. And it's almost, you know, maybe it's a wrong way of seeing it, but I see startups almost as a continuous hackathon. A continuous hackathon of, if a problem comes up with a new technology or development, it's always a startup who then dives into this problem and comes up with a solution. And the great thing is that it's not just fun to find the solution, but you can actually make money from it, because the bigger companies do not have anymore the knowledge in-house. They are looking for this knowledge outside, and usually they end up with startups who have the time, the knowledge, and the drive to do this. And I think that is the great thing about startups. So they are, I think, in this whole process, a very integral part of bringing this forward. So I would really hope that a lot of people here are just inspired to at least look into this issue of hydrogen and to see where are the challenges and to help us you know, bring it forward, and at the same time create a very interesting and successful startup in the meantime.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think we have a couple of questions from the audience, so please.
Yes, we do. We have 3 questions from the public that I will read. Actually, we have 4, but we just have time for 3. Now, 1 question, 1 answer. No long answers. So, who do you see as key players in developing hydrogen economy? Startups, energy corporations, or the government?
All. I think I just said it. All of them.
Yes, all together.
Okay, so no.
Only all together we cannot make it happen without having all those important parties.
You will all make great politicians one day, I'm sure.
Well,
Now, is domestic hydrogen production on a horizon, or are we talking about industrial mainly these days? So do you see households producing hydrogen?
Not really.
No,
not really. I
not
don't really
now.
see. But that's because of the nowadays technology what we have. But in the future, there is probably place for innovation, and I do not say that it will not happen in the future. But right now, the scale is that important. You know, the economy of scale. That's really something that we need to make hydrogen competitive.
And lastly, but not leastly, Estonia, one of the most polluting countries in the world for sources used to produce energy. What are the plans of Estonia to firstly develop renewable energy economy to have actually space for hydrogen production? So Raimond, I think you know the most about it.
That's a really good question, because as I told already in the beginning, that Estonia has great chances to produce all the energy we need from renewable sources. But to make the change happen, we haven't had those decisions made. And those strategic decisions, really large-scale decisions, have to be made as soon as possible. So we are taking 2 short steps. So we need much longer steps.
Do you want any last words to our audience? Because we do have 1 minute left.
I already made my call.
Yeah, hydrogen will come anyway, so don't be worried. If you don't believe it will happen in 7 years, I would say. The change will happen here, and hydrogen will be part of our everyday life.
Well, on this inspiring note, big round of applause for our speakers.